Hi everyone, happy Tuesday. It's also, what is it, National Siblings Day. So be sure and reach out and hug a sibling today. Hugs are good anyway. Thanks for joining me tonight. It has just been a whirlwind the last couple of weeks. As many of you know, I was in Texas for a couple of weeks. Did have some fun there, enjoyed being able to still broadcast from there so we could continue our series. And then Saturday was our onstage local for Stampin' Up! And it was just a blast. For any of you fellow demonstrators out there, if you've never been to one, I highly recommend going. It is just incredible. Lots of friendly people, met some new folks that sat at our table. So I'll say hi, Paula, hi, Lee. Hope you guys are going to be able to join later. And of course, for those who attend on stage, we get a copy of the brand new catalog. Yay, so much fun. And we also get to play with some of the new products. One of the gifts that we received is what you're seeing on the screen. It's a nice little light box that Stampin' Up! Gave us. It's not something that they're selling in the catalog. This was just a thank you gift to all of us for attending. But I had some fun with it, and as soon as I get my craft room revamped, this is going to go up on my desk all lit up. So I'll move that out of the way. And this is the lovely box that came in, and that's actually their 30th anniversary logo. Isn't that gorgeous? I just love those colors. So as I was sitting there at on stage and playing with the new stamp sets, and not only did we play with a couple of new ones, but via Prize Patrol, we also got extra stamp sets. So it was really nice. And one of them just really spoke to my heart. And that's the one we're going to use tonight. So yes, I know if you're a customer, it's not going to be available to you until June 1st, but I couldn't resist kind of giving you a sneak peek. So let me bring it out here. It's called Peaceful Reflection. And this is 2-layer stamping, which is something I just adore doing. The color combinations you can get by doing that are really nice. But it is just such a pretty stamp set. We have a pond on our property, and I get to see dragonflies flitting around all summer long. And so the little dragonfly stamp you see here was the first thing I saw in this set. And that's what we're going to be using on today's card. There's not a lot of stamping that we're going to do on the card today. This is going to be a pretty simple one that you'll be able to substitute other stamps for if you want to give it a try before the new catalog is available for you. So we'll be using the dragonfly out of Peaceful Reflection. And then I wanted a pretty sentiment to go with it. So I went back to one of my all-time favorites, which is Climbing Orchid. And we're going to use the sentiment, Thinking of You. I love the font on this. That's kind of pretty much like my handwriting, if I'm being a little more careful than usual. So that will really make it look like the card reflects me. So that's the sentiment we're going to be using. And I have those already mounted up on blocks. But what about the card base itself? And yes, I do not have a finished card for you. We're just going to make this one together. This is another new product that's coming out in the new catalog. And it's the detailed note cards and envelopes. And the reason I felt we could go ahead and use this, even though it's not going to be available to you for a while, is really it's simply some brush stroked color down the card, a watercolor effect. You could very easily take one of our note cards and envelopes that are available in the current catalog, and just get out your Fresh Fig ink pad, and with your aqua painter you could go in and very easily create this ombre effect. So that's what we're going to be using as our card base. Now this that I'm going to bring up is gorgeous. Look at that. This is some of these specialty paper that's coming up, and it's laser etched or laser cut, I should say. And there are several of the different designs. So we have that one, which I really love. This is another gorgeous one, the falling or climbing vines. We also have this floral cutout. And for those who like a very tailored card, you have your lattice work. Again, not available to you yet, but if you have any dies that will cut designs like that, you certainly could use that in place of these. Now, I like all of those, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with my original choice. The other thing I wanted to point out is this paper is actually can be used on either side. So on one side it's Whisper White, on the other side it's Very Vanilla. So if you were feeling very vanilla, you certainly could use that. How are we going to attach this down? Because that's the very first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to be using my good old multi-purpose liquid glue. And I want it to look kind of free floating, even though it's very delicate. So I want to be sure I'm not rough handling it, but it has a nice edge all the way around. That's a solid border. I'm just going to take my multi-purpose liquid glue and run a thin bead, but making sure I get good coverage, because we definitely don't want this pulling away from the card base. So I'll do both sides and then run some along the top and the bottom as well. If I can manage to do this without getting glue all over my fingers. All right. And then if you did want a few more points of contact, you have these solid flowers, so you certainly could put little dabs of glue there just to give it some extra contact points to stick to the card base. All right, I think I've got all the glue on there I want. Now I'm just going to line it up. So I'll put it down here. And I like using the liquid glue because it gives me some wiggle room, which I needed with this. Give it a couple of presses on those solid flowers where I glued it down. And already it is making a gorgeous, gorgeous card. The next thing we're going to do, I'll just pull this to the side. We're going to stamp our sentiment. So I cut a scrap piece of Whisper White, and this measures 2.5 inches by 3/4 of an inch, and that's what we're going to use to stamp on. And this is for our sentiment. So let me just bring out my stamp pad. And I'm using Fresh Fig to go along with the watercolor wash that's on the card base. I'll go ahead and ink up my stamp. And because I haven't used this one in a while, I'm going to go ahead and stamp it on a scrap piece of paper to make sure I'm getting good coverage. And it looks like I am. Just going to pull this down where I can see it. And pardon me if my head gets in the way. Now I am going to take and put that dragonfly towards the upper left corner. So I'm going to keep my sentiment more towards the right. I'll put that down. Sorry about that. I hit the camera with my edge of my glasses and pull it up. I just love that sentiment. And then what we're going to do is we're going to back it, because if I just put this on the card, the white kind of washes it out against the background. But if we take a piece of fresh fig cardstock that's cut just a little bit larger, and we use that to back the sentiment, you can see that it really helps it pop. Now I did cut this a little longer than my sentiment piece. So this actually measures 2 3/4 by 1 inch. And I may end up even cutting just a smidge off the end because I don't want a really big border. And this I'm going to go ahead and just glue with the multi-purpose liquid glue straight down onto the backing, or the mat, I guess we should call it. All right. Make sure it's centered on there. And as you can see, I have a little bit more over here on the left, pull it away from the pad, than I do on the right, but that's not a problem. Just take your snips out and just cut a smidge off the end. That looks much better. So always mat your sentiment first and then make little adjustments like that afterwards. Okay, that is going to get put down to the kind of the bottom right, but not all the way at the bottom, because I do want to leave a lot of that lacy floral pattern to come through. And then we also still have to do the dragonfly, and that's going to go right about here. So that way my dragonfly will look like it's floating. I have another piece of scrap whisper white, and this is what I'm going to put my dragonfly on. So I'll stamp that pretty dragonfly down. And I can leave it like that, or remember I said this was two-step stamping. So I definitely could take the wings stamp, which is right here, and I could fill in part of the wings. And I think I'm going to do that. There's so much open lace work going on in this that I think a little bit of a solid image in there will really help it to pop. So let me just clean off my other stamp. I can get my wet wipes open here. I usually use my chamois, but I haven't even really had a chance to unpack everything yet. So it's still in the suitcase. But I do want to clean that off before I take it off the block, so I don't accidentally drop it on my card and make a mess. So I'll take that off and put my wings on. And I'm going to want to stamp off because I don't want a really, really dark wings. That would kind of defeat the purpose there. So I'm just going to stamp it off on a scrap piece of paper, and then I'll come back in and decide where exactly, I need to pull this down a little bit, where exactly I want it. It's not a perfect fit for the wings, but that's one of the things I like about it, is it makes it look watercolor just like our card base does. So there we have it. And then I get to fussy cut this out, and it doesn't take very long to do. Just going to be careful. It's okay if I leave a little bit of a white border but I don't want a lot of a white border on there because we have plenty of white that's going on in the card already. When you're fussy cutting, remember it's easier to move the paper around than to try and make your scissors cut precisely by themselves. On the straightaways, I'm okay, but when it comes to these curved parts, and here I'm definitely going to leave a bit of a white border because otherwise we wouldn't have anything to attach the tail piece to, and we definitely want to make sure that that doesn't accidentally get crinkled or even break off. Same thing with my antenna. So I'm just going to go in and cut around those, leaving a little bit of a white border. Pardon my hands getting in the way, but this is where it gets a little tricky for me. Here we go. Turning the paper. And I've got just the top part of the tail to cut away. Again, making sure I leave a bit of a white border like that. All right, so there is our dragonfly. And our dragonfly is going to go right up there. But we're going to pop a few things up on dimensionals just to help them stand away from the card. And I do have one other thing, and I wasn't sure I was going to use it, but look at this beautiful twine. It's just gorgeous, and it matches perfectly. And I was thinking about possibly wrapping the bottom of this with a little bit of twine. So let's just do a dry run. Absolutely nothing with doing a dry run to see if you like something. And this twine's pretty thick, so it may end up not working for this, especially if I do it twice. Let's try at the top to see. I've got a little bit more room up there. And like I said, don't know if I'm going to use it, just kind of playing around. So we could put that up there and then, but you know what? I'm thinking I like it better without the twine. So we'll just pull it aside. And let me grab my dimensionals, which are right here. Now, I've used the center of bits of all the dimensionals, but I never, ever throw the edges away because they work just as well, especially when you're talking about a long piece like this. I can take this and use this whole section on the back of this mat. So I've got a nice long piece for there. I'm going to cut another one for the top. Oops, I cut that a little too much. So I'll put that on there, and then I even have another piece right here that was left over, and it's perfect. All right, let me close up my ink pad real quick. And put that away, and then we'll peel this off. Just like that. Bring back in the card itself. And again, watching where we're putting it so that I'm leaving lots of that lacy pattern showing. And then deciding, do I want it to go all the way over to the edge? I think I like that little bit of a white border. So I'm going to go ahead and set it just to the inside and then press it down. Now we're ready for our dragonfly, which we're going to put right there. I'm not going to pop the dragonfly up because, especially since that tail is so long and narrow, I want to make sure that as much of the surface of this is glued down as possible. So again, I'm going to use the multi-purpose liquid glue and to make sure I get up there into the wings and down along the tail. And don't squeeze the bottle when you're doing that. That way you don't have to worry about ending up with a big gloppy mess. And then we'll just decide where we want it. I'm thinking right there is good. And we'll stick that down. Probably could have left the glue off the top of the wings, but wasn't sure how far down I was going to put it. Looks pretty, yes? I like it. But a girl's got to have some bling, so I'm going to bring in my Wink of Stella for dragonfly wings because we know that they sparkle in the sunlight. So we'll just put some on there like that. And then to help set those flowers off even more, I thought I would bring in, see if we want to use pearls or do we want to use rhinestones. I even have these, but I think those are just a bit too big for the centers of the flowers. So I can use pearls. Hang on, I think I've already got one open here. I have a bad habit of opening a whole bunch of things when I have ones already open. So there we go. And let me find my pokey tool right here. Now, if I want to use pearls, which I certainly can do, that gives it a very elegant look. But, come back here, you. I didn't push you down. I'm thinking rhinestones might stand out a little better. Oh, yes, I really like that. Push it over where it goes. I like that. So I'm going to go ahead. And here I'm not worried about threes or anything. I'm just going to fill up the center of these open lace flowers. Like that. Got another one. I've got two more down here. So we'll put this one there. And a little one over here. Let's see, where else? Got one right there. And I've got one right there. So I have no idea if I have odd numbers or even numbers, but to me it doesn't matter. I just wanted to give this a little bit of sparkle. And I think you can see how that shimmers and shines. All right, so that's our card for tonight. You can see that by incorporating elements such as a beautiful designer series paper, or in this case, some laser cut paper. You could even do it with an embossing folder that has maybe some places that emboss and cut at the same time. So lots of different options to make this card. Or if you have a larger stamp set that has a lot of open areas, you could just go ahead and stamp using our craft white on a colored background, and it would give you very much the same effect. I hope you enjoyed the card and will try it yourself. Next week, we'll get back to more of in line with what our natural step of progression would be for the beginner series. And by that, I mean, we started with clean and simple cards. Then we went on to layering cards using DSP. We did dry embossing with embossing folders, and we did coloring of stamped images. So I'm thinking probably our next step will be actually doing some heat embossing. I don't know if you all have tried that yet, but oh, I love heat embossing. It is just magical to watch the embossing powder get shiny and how beautiful it makes the cards. So next week, that's probably what we're going to work on. A very easy procedure to do or technique to use. So don't, think, oh, that's going to be too hard, and skip the project, because I think you really, really will like it. And we'll use stamp sets from the current catalog, but just this once, I had to use stuff that we received at On Stage to kind of whet your appetite for what's going to be coming in the new catalog. And while I can't show you any of the inside pages of the catalog, I can show you the cover. Look at all those gorgeous colors. Yes, it's going to be very pretty. All right, if you need any supplies at all for crafting, I would be more than happy to be your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. I'll post this video on my blog as well as on YouTube. And to see it on my blog, which is also where you'll go to purchase any supplies, just go to cardsbywinnie.wordpress.com. All right, well, thanks everybody for joining tonight. I'm going to go ahead and end the video since there are no questions, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye now.